No, you haven't lost your mind, and neither have I. This video is actually about Evony and anime. Hi, and welcome to Red Evony. I am Akayasha. You can call me Aka. So, you might be wondering, what the hell am I gonna learn from Pikachu? With the way Evony have been releasing generals lately, probably gotta catch 'em all might make some sense. But that's not what we're talking about here. Okay, now you might be wondering, all right, so what am I gonna learn from Luffy and Goku? Well, maybe something about friendship and hard work and victory, but those are not the kind of things that we're talking about here. The anime in question that we have here is called Kingdom. The backdrop of the anime is set in ancient China, and it follows the story of a young peasant boy named Shin as he tries to fulfill his dream of being the greatest general in China. That's starting to make a bit more sense, right? Right? It's a war anime that has warring countries, generals, troops. Starting to sound a lot like Evony, doesn't it? Over the holidays, I was able to binge watch a few seasons of this thing, so I can tell you that it's quite good. Before we get down to business here, if you're going to be coining in Evony, gotta make sure that you're using AppToIDE. It's a great way for you to save on your purchases, and the new channel code REDSTAR that you can use for extra discounts is up and running. So be sure you're set up and ready for that. If you're new to AppToIDE and you need some help setting it up, instructions are down in the description of this video. Okay, so what can we learn from this anime kingdom that we have here? Well, we're gonna start off with the most straightforward stuff, okay? As I said, it's a war anime. The countries in the anime have armies, and as you'd expect, you would need people to lead those armies. So, in the anime, we have generals. These are the top dogs that will be leading your army. And of course, the difference between having a general and not having a general, or not having a good general, is very big. For anyone that has ever sent out a march without a general, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So having a general is important for leading your army. That's the first thing. Now, as you'd expect, these generals are leading a big army. And of course, they might need some help with that. There will need to be a command and communication chain to make sure that the army is doing what it's supposed to do. Now, most of these big generals will have generals below them that are helping with moving the army and making sure that the command is going right. In other words, they'd have assistant generals. So, the concept of assistant generals in Evony kind of makes sense. Of course, one big difference between the anime and Evony is that while in Evony we only have one assistant general, in the anime they have multiple. So, who knows? Maybe multiple assistant generals is something that Evony is going to bring out in the future. The next thing that we want to touch on is regarding troop composition. Now, as you see, in the anime, when it's time for war, the two armies square off against each other. So you have your formations, you're facing the enemy, and you're getting ready to fight it out. In pretty much most of the situations that you find, all the armies have all different troop types in there. So you have your ground troops, you have your cavalry, you have your archers, you have your special troops, all of them are in there. So if we translate that into Evony language, that means that you should have all troop types and all layers in your attacking march. That's pretty simple and straightforward, and it's something that a lot of us have been able to get our heads wrapped around. How many troops you need for your different troop types and for your different layers is a topic of a different discussion, but they all have to be present. Now, the next point that we're going to touch on is a bit of an interesting one, okay? So as you see, when the armies are squaring off and the charge command is given, typically what happens, the first troops that go out are the ground or infantry troops. They are the first one to run across the battlefield and engage the enemy. Yes, we have cavalry troops as part of the army, but in most situations, ground is the first to engage. And this is actually an interesting realization. It's something that my friend Derek pointed out a while ago in his videos, where he showed that ground speed is usually faster than cav speed. So, when we're talking of battle mechanics, for melee troops, ground is pretty much the first one to engage. And you have your cavs coming later, and they just wreak havoc and destroy the enemy troops. That's the way it's supposed to go. Then, of course, the next point that we're going to touch on is about troop advantages. Which troops have advantage over the others? So let's talk about the easiest one first. You have ground troops that are engaging, and then your cavs come. The cavs are much stronger than your ground troops, and in most cases, they will break through those ground troops with devastating force. Now, that's not to say that ground cannot kill cavs. They absolutely can. We're just talking about advantages here. So your cav troops will have significant advantage over your ground troops. But then, as you progress through the battlefield, you get to the archers. And these archers are long-range troops. And they can run down a great deal of fire on your cavs. As you can see, for cavs, running into archers is a big problem. And if care is not taken, those archers could wipe out your cavs. However, if your cavs have enough HP, they will be able to withstand a good deal of fire from those archers. And if it so happens that those cavs manage to get to those archers, well, it's game over at that point. And that is basically the same principle that we have in Evony. Cavs kill ground, archers kill cavs, ground killed archers, but basically, if your troops manage to get to those archers are also dead. So, the anime can help us with remembering how some of those core parts of the Evony mechanics are supposed to work. Now, on a bit of a side note, I don't know if any of you have noticed, but do you notice how the design of the T1 troops kind of matches how the peasant ground troops look in the anime? Did any of you notice that? Anyway, that's all good. Now, we have talked about a lot of the similarities and things that we can learn from this anime about Evony. But, of course, you would expect not everything goes that way. Take Siege, for example. Okay? We use Siege in Evony as a sort of secondary attacking troop. They are there to rain attacks on the enemy and the enemy keeps. However, in the anime, Siege are not necessarily used in that way. They are primarily used as ways of conquering castles and fortresses. And what they primarily do is to serve as a vehicle for troops to get into those fortresses. So, the value of Siege in the anime is for transportation purposes. Moving the troops from the ground over into the fortress walls and for them to continue attacking. So, that's a big difference. Now, the next thing, which, again, when you think about it is pretty obvious, is that on one hand, we have an anime, and on the other hand, we have a game. Okay? They are two different things. The anime, there's a lot of other stuff going on. There's drama, there's conflict. There's all of those things that spice it up to make it good. And a lot of those stuff we don't have in Evony. But we have events, we have daily tasks, we have other stuff going on. So, yeah, there is still a fundamental difference between the two. Now, we talked about generals and assistant generals earlier on in the video. But picking out good assistant generals is something that a lot of people still have trouble with. If that is you, then you will want to watch this next video where I go into detail about what you need to do to pick out your best assistant general. That's it for me, guys. Thank you very much. Aka signing out.